Hi everyone, Darren Hunter here. Our article released this week from our knowledge library, 11 wrong property types that you should not manage. And whenever I'm doing conferences or seminars, I'm always saying, look, just stop doing property management. Run from it, repent from it, renounce it, never do it again, and only start doing quality, profitable property management. There is a big difference. And I see most agencies really don't have any real criteria whatsoever when it comes up to signing new properties. Now, sure, they may not sign a property that's like 2 hours drive away from the office, and they likely won't sign up a property that's in obvious disrepair. But other than that, there's really not much more criteria. And what happens over time is that we end up getting a portion of our portfolio, whether it's 10, 20, 30, 40%, that ends up having double the work or the hours on that management just to sort it out, whether it's difficult tenants or it's a low-grade property or whatever. Also, the incomes are very, very low too, so which means we end up filling up our portfolio with the workload, but we're not getting the income that we could get. If we took those low-end type properties that we have signed up and replace them with quality, then suddenly our entire business, our entire portfolio is earning 20, 30, 40% more with probably less workload, but the same amount of properties as before, okay? So properties aren't just equal with each other. They're all in different conditions. So here is the 11 wrong property types. If you're watching the video here, we've supplied the link that you can read the article as well. So number one, low rent property. Now, when you're taking on low rent property, you're also possibly, depending on where you are, increasing the difficulty of the tenancy too, where you're now stepping out of normal working hours that you would spend on a typical managed property in a year to maybe even doubling your time on them as well. So low rent properties. But again, if you're still charging the same management percentage and you're taking on a low rent property, well, you still got the workload, but you're now earning much less. So what is the rent level before you say no? Now, that could be before you start getting into those low end properties, but you're going to work out what rent level before you say no, and let your competitors manage it. Now, low fee property too. So that's doing extraordinary discounts, but just maintaining your fees. Don't go cutting your fees down, but look at, how much is that property going to earn per year? Is it $1,500? Is it $2,000? Is it $3,000 a year? And don't look at it as a $1,100 a month rental or a $300 a week rental, or we get 10% management fees for that property. Forget it. How much income is it going to earn per year? And then have a minimum before you say no. So for example, you will not take on anything that's going to bring in approximately $2,000 a year in fee income in a typical year. Alrighty, the next one, low grade property. So this is really, how good a quality is the property? Has it been kept in good condition? Is it reasonable? Now, if the property is in disrepair, that may reflect on the owner's values towards a property and doesn't believe in keeping the property in a reasonable to good state of repair. Of course, a low grade property, a good tenant doesn't want to live there. So if a good tenant doesn't want to live there in any one of these criteria, why do you want to take it on? Do you just need the business? Do you just need to be busy? Well, it's not a good enough reason. It's got to attract a good quality tenant. Alrighty, next, low socio property. So when I'm speaking and training in the United States, we don't use this because of their anti-discrimination laws, but I'm not in the US, so I'm going to teach this one. But low socio property, what type of tenant are you going to attract that's going to give you so much more time and stress? The more low socio we go, the more domestic violence and drug issues, and possibly, of course, low rents, but the rents may not even be getting paid. So you've got to consider those options, but do you really need to be taking on properties in low socio-economic areas? I come across portfolios where it's all low socio, so they have to then choose what are the better areas out of those. But if you don't need to be managing them, then why do you need them? Because they're only going to keep you very busy and stressed and not earning much money. All right, long distance properties, how far is too far? I always say as a guide, no more than 30 minutes drive from the office, and that will include peak hour traffic. But you hear of people taking on properties an hour drive, an hour and a half. When you take on too many of those properties, suddenly you end up spending too much time sitting in a car, not being productive managing properties. And in extreme situations, you can end up having property managers working part-time managing properties and part-time driving in a car. No wonder why they're stressed. So you've got to be very, very careful about long distance properties. And if it's too far, just say no. C-class property, and this is really a reflection of the owner. If the owner is unreasonable, over-demanding, takes up lots of your time, won't repair the property, wants unreasonable high rents, just don't take it on, because a C-class owner, C-class property, C-class tenant. Double your time, you're not going to earn your money. It all just is bad business, and it puts toxicity into the portfolio. And a number of properties like that are only going to have a problem. So how do you tell these sort of owners up front? Well, generally they want to screw you down on fees. Their property isn't in a good state of repair. They're very their mindset is surrounding cheap. So that could be a warning sign up front. So just be aware of that. All right, now on part 2 of the article here, default landlord property. And this is where you just got to be careful. You got an owner, he's had a phone call from the boss, he needs to move to another area and now rent out his family home. He's now becoming an owner or a landlord by default, not his choice. What is their mindset? What is their expectations? Are they ready for the business of accommodation, or are they still emotionally attached to their family home? And when they move back in a year or 2 years' time, are they going to be unreasonable regarding fair wear and tear? Are they going to go to war on you and the office? So these are the things you've got to ask questions now. What is their expectations about other people living in their home, not looking after it the way that they expect? These are sort of questions here. If you feel that there's too many warning signs, you really should not manage a default landlord property, because those sort of owners shouldn't be landlords. Okay, now wrong type of property. So for example, in Australia or in Adelaide where I am, flats and units, which is, multi-story sometimes, but also ex-government or public housing homes which have been bought by a private investor, but they still attract a certain type of tenant. Now, there's other areas here in Adelaide where they have quality apartments. Well, a quality apartment's going to get a certain type of tenant that's a business person, going to pay the rent on time, look after it. Are we happy with that result? Absolutely. But if the certain type of property is only going to get a low socio type tenant who's going to have difficulty paying the rent and skyrocket the time it takes to manage, and also stress levels go up, if that's the typical result you're going to get with that type of property, don't take on that type of property. Okay, you've got to work out what those property types are for you. Next one I call the F word, furnished property. So why do you want to take on furnished property? Well, unless you're doing student accommodation or short-term rental, like it's an Airbnb, or holiday accommodation, well, you need furniture in those situations. But other than that, in traditional bread and butter residential property management out in the suburbs, well, now you're lowering the pool of quality tenants who want to rent that type of property because they've got their own furniture, and you're just stepping into a world of problems. So furnished properties, the F word, it's called the F word for good reason. You want to avoid it as best you can. Okay, eviction property, taking on other people's monkeys. So we've got a self-managing owner comes in, hey, look, can you help me? My tenant's 4 months behind in the rent. Can you go and get it? Well, I've done so many years in property management. I learned to avoid these. Like if they've got themselves parked into that type of problem, Mr. Owner, you go and sort it out. When you've got the tenant out, come back to us. We'll be happy to re-rent the property. So it took a lot of years for me to say that because of the pain and the problems. And not getting the money out of the tenant anyway, and it was just not worth the issues and the hassles that it brought. And number 11, this is leasing only, where the owner only wants you to go find a tenant and then self-manage again. Well, unless you can convert them to full management, why? I mean, why take one of your quality properties and give it to a self-managing owner as well? And if the tenant does get behind in the rent, well, you might be all over it when the tenant's 1, 2, 3, 4 days behind, but the owner self-managing may not do anything until the tenant is 2, 3, 4 weeks behind. And before then, it's just too far gone. The tenant's now on the way to eviction. It can't be recovered. And then the owner thinks, well, not only have I got a bad tenant, but I've also got a bad agent, now damaging your reputation. So another reason why personally I don't like taking on leasing only properties. So there is some criteria there, 11 criteria. Click on the link, have a look at the article covering types of property that you really should avoid. Now, there are different strategies involved as well. If you've got a lot of these properties already parked on your portfolio very quickly, when you've got your criteria in place, you're now only taking on quality, profitable properties. For every 1 net gross, so let's say you lose 2 in a month from natural loss, but you gain 5, well, that's 3 net growth. Let's say you get 3 quality properties brought on board, then you might get rid of 2 of those bad properties. So you've got to work out which ones to go. It's always the worst first, and then replace them as you go. And each time you replace a property, you get rid of one, bring in a quality one, get rid of another, bring in another quality one. Your stress levels go down, your workload goes down. Though you may be managing the same amount of properties, your income just goes up and up. The value of the business goes up and up and up. And you keep on doing that, my goodness me, you're going to have a quality, profitable portfolio that everybody enjoys managing. So hopefully that article really helps, and reach out if you want some more help or advice. Take care.